in Dallas, Texas, the apartment of Sarah Yaron. And I'm here for the Dallas Jewish Society.
Historical Society.
Historical Society, that's right, the Dallas Jewish Historical Society. And Mr. Repp, I want to thank you very much for saying that you're going to do this interview. It's very kind of you. And I'll start with a series of questions. The first question is, where and when were you born?
8/16/1923 in Radom, Poland. R-A-D-O-M, Poland.
Radom, Poland, okay. Where did you live?
I lived on Mila, M-I-L-A, 4. And I come from a family of 4 brothers, 1 sister. I had a wonderful father, I had a wonderful mother, and I had a very good life.
Okay. Tell me about the neighborhood you lived in.
The neighborhood I lived in was a mixed neighborhood. The school I went to was a mixed school. But I went to a Hebrew school. In that Hebrew school, even they had Christian children. We had a principal, a Jewish principal and a Christian principal. It was a private school. And I attended down at the school 5 days a week.
So in the public school you went to, what percentage were Jews, what percentage were Gentiles?
See, the city of Radom was 1 million inhabitants. In the 1 million inhabitants, they had 80% of Catholics and 20% of Jews. That means they had, in a city of 1 million, they got 200,000 Jewish people. And 80,000, and in 80,000, they had 800,000. They had Christian children, Catholic mostly.
So that's a larger percentage than most Jews, most cities of Jews. 20% of Jews is a lot.
Yes.
What business was your father in?
Well, my father had a business, something similar to what I had, but he had several businesses. He had a department store. And then he had what we called in Europe a cantura. A cantura was something that place in America would be equal to a pawn shop. You know, people came in, cash checks, and pawn things like gold, diamonds. So that was the business my father was in.
So it was sort of a pawn shop and...
Well, it was similar to America to a pawn shop.
Pawn shop.
But it was not called a pawn shop, it was called a cantura.
Oh.
Because in a cantura, it's like in a small bank. Let's say if you had a job, you worked 5 days a week, and Friday, the Bank of Poland, the city where I was in, closed up at 2 o'clock. You got the check at 5 o'clock. So you used to come to my father, and you had to find a line of people waiting, and he cashed their checks. He made profit out of cashing the check. He charged for it, but he didn't drop people. But
just like they do here, they charge for it.
You know, he helped them out.
So you told me you had brothers and sisters. Can you tell me a little bit about them?
Now, my oldest brother, Shruel, in America would be Saul. Saul was, my sister was the oldest.
She was the oldest, okay.
My oldest sister, in 1937, I'm going before the war, in 1937, at that time I was 13 years old, so I remember very well. And there was a young man came from Paris, France, came to Radom, Poland. His parents were living down there, a very Hasidic family. And it was a match, or shidduch made, and my sister married that man.
So like a matchmaker.
A matchmaker in America.
Right.
And when they went back to Paris, they opened a jewelry store. He was in the jewelry business, because that was my father's.
So they moved to Paris before the war?
Yeah, yes, 1937. After the wedding, they moved to Paris.
And you were bar mitzvah that year?
Huh?
You were bar mitzvah that year in 37?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And then I had my older brother, David. David was in school the same as I was. So hated the same as I was. And I had a younger brother, Yankel, or Jacob in English. And he was only, in 1939, He was only 5 years old. He was the youngest. And I had a wonderful father, had a wonderful mother, and I had a wonderful life.
Yeah.
Our house was a house of lots of life. My father loved people. And he always, on Shabbos, Friday afternoon, Friday we went to the mikveh.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
You know.
Every Friday, the whole family?
Yeah, every Friday. Yeah,
wow.
Everybody. We went to the mikveh. And after the mikveh, we came home and we got dressed up. We went to shul, synagogue, in English. And then we came home. There was a nice table served, a Shabbos meal, beautiful. And then Shabbos, we got up in the morning and we went to shul again, And we came home from shul, we had a Shabbos goy, turn on the light the candles, and go bring the chunt. You know what chunt is?
I don't, tell me.
You don't know what chunt is? Chunt is, you see, on Friday, we made, chunt is made out of potatoes and meat, and we took it to the bakery.
Mm-hmm.
And the bakery, they cooked it, I would say, yes? And then next day, the Shabbos goy went, when we came home from shul, brought it home, and my father always used to bring home guests, an oil in Yiddish, And the guest was always like this. Brought the chazen, you know what the chazen is?
Yes.
Cantor.
Cantor, right.
In English. And the gabbai and the rabbi.
Okay.
We always had at least 3-4 people. And we had a beautiful meal, and then they were sitting and singing Zmiris. You know what Zmiris is?
You gotta tell me.
Religious songs.
Oh, okay.
After Zmiris. It's called Zmiris.
Okay.
And we had a beautiful Shabbos, and then Shabbos in the evening. My father, we didn't, but my father went back to shul.
So he was Orthodox? Your family was Orthodox at the
My
time?
whole family was
Yeah.
Orthodox, yeah.
Okay, so you went to shul a
Sure.
lot, yeah.
And then Sunday we didn't have to work.
Mm-hmm.
My father used to take us to hockey games or soccer games, or in the wintertime to ice skating rinks, We had a wonderful, wonderful life. Now that doesn't mean there were lots of Europe was like this. Either you were up or you were down. There were no middle. There were lots of schnorrs. We had a wonderful, good life.
So tell me, okay, go ahead.
And you see, this was going on until 1939.
Right.
In 1939, matter of fact, in 1938, my father was selling bonds for the war plans. They knew something was going to break out, so he was in charge of selling bonds, war bonds.
Mm.
And we always could find in our house I'm talking about from the government, some high-ranking people down there, and they used to tell him, Lisa, my father's name was Lisa, why don't you go to London or go to America? I'm going to put myself in the same bracket. I've been down here in America now about 59 years. I'm established. I don't have to worry for anything, thank God. When you have everything, how can you take everything and just leave it and go? So my father asked the generals, how long do you think that war will last? I said, between a month and 2, between 4 weeks and 8 weeks. 8 weeks, you can take it. If you got plenty of geld, you can find a place, but go. But when the war broke out, who in the world knew we had at that time in our home We had a German Jewish refugee living in our house. My father took in, but Hitler's in the mud. But who knew Hitler was keeping that same young man's parents as like for a ransom, you know, like you kidnap somebody and you send out somebody to give out good messages. So he said, well, they take away, you know, your business, they take away your money, and they make a ghetto. But there was no bringing up where there'd be killings like that.
They couldn't imagine something like that would happen.
No. So my father said at that time, we got enough going down here, we got enough money, we don't need to go. But when Hitler marched in, September 1, 1939, everything changed.
Okay, before you tell me about that, before the war, you're saying you had a very good life, and you lived a great family, all the brothers and sisters going to shul. How did you and your family interact with the Gentile community before the war?
Now, I'm going to let you know a little military secret. We had never had Jews even working for us.
You had Gentiles working for you, Catholic.
All Christian people working.
So you got along well with them.
And we got along very, very good with them. But at the same time, I'm going to let you know a little secret. You see, when you live in a country like Poland, and in that country down there, you know, there's anti-Semitism. But anti-Semitism is such a thing where you get used to it. You see, at that time, in 1936, 37, 34, 35, I'm going to go back when I was even a young boy, 5, 6 years old. When you went to school, on the way to school, and another Polish kid saw you and hollered after you, Jew, Rit, go to Palestine. There was no Israel then. You see, you get used to it, you know you got to live with it. And sometimes they even throw the rack at you. But, you see, it's the same thing wherever you are. If you're a little stronger, even if you're competitive, they start having respect for you. They stop bothering you. And we had a good little fight, and the Pollock lost, and he became friends with you, played soccer with him. He did that no more.
So
you go to Palestine.
So you did play soccer with some of, you had some friends.
You know, it was
got
all in a mixed, you know.
Right. They didn't care if you were Jewish. If you were a good athlete, that hooked him.
Let me tell you something. You see, our business consisted of most of goyim.
Right.
Now, Friday, you find a lots of Yeats coming in because they got the checks. They couldn't go to the bank, so they come to my father, Rab Laser, you know. And he used to cash the checks or loan him money because the poor Jew in Poland, the shoemaker, the painter, whatever trade he had, went out and hacked his wife's jewelry and whatever they had. Even the candelabras, the silver candelabras, and they borrowed some money. And they leased a garden, a fruit garden, you know, apples, pears, plums, and they stayed there all summer long. And then they pulled it, they took it down, sold it, and they made a little profit. You know. So, but anti-Semitism is a funny thing. You know, anti-Semitism, you learn how to breathe. It's there. Look, if you went to the class where they taught you Polish, you know, I'm not going to say English because I live in America now, but at that time when I was a kid, in the classes where intermixed Jewish children and Catholic children. Before the class started, I'm talking about before the class started, they wouldn't say to you, all of the Jewish faith will be excused, have to get out. You're going to make a prayer. One word, Jews, out. See? So, you see, anti-Semitism is there. But you learn to live with it.
So even in the schools, they had a little antisemitism.
It could have been intelligentsia even. They used the same thing, you know.
So, before you tell me about what happened, you know, once the Nazis invaded, I want to ask you one question. You were about 15 years old. How much did you weigh at that time, at the age of 15? You were a pretty big, strong kid.
I say 150, 160.
150, 160, yeah. It's a good weight and nice sized kid. About how tall were you when you were 15?
When I was 15, I think I must have been 5'10".
Okay, that's a perfect weight for 5'10". That's like an athlete's build.
You know, we played a lot of soccer.
Yeah. And then in 1939, tell me what happened.
Well, you see, 1939, September 1, when the war broke out, and the Germans marched in. When you saw the first few tanks coming through, you were 15 years old, I was able to read. And you saw on the tanks written, the Juden sind our Umblick.
Say that in English?
The Jews are our devils.
Wow.
You know, right away. It goes through your mind. Why did they come out right away? They just marched in to have this on the tanks. So when they came in, I will say the first 30 days, everything was, I will say, normal, with an exception. They came out with they had how do you call it, light, they had light from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Curfew.
A curfew.
Yeah.
And at that curfew, you see, they came out right away from 7 a.m. And after 7 p.m. or before that, if you are caught, the penalty is death.
Penalty is death if you're caught between 7 and 7. And that was for everybody, including Christians and Jews?
Yeah.
Curfew was for everybody?
Everybody, yeah. From 7, if you caught before 7 a.m., dead. After 7 a.m., from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. was you could walk, and after in the evening after 7, if you caught, is dead. But we didn't know, you see, the capital of Poland is Warsaw. The whole world knows it's Warsaw. When the Germans marched in the first 30 days, they had enough time to change the capital from Warsaw to Krakow. In Krakow, when he sat and settled his principality, I call it, and made it the capital, after the first 30 days, you start coming out with bulletins. And the bulletins were, the first thing, with that curfew, if you caught between that time and that time, the penalty is death. Then they came out. If you walk on the sidewalk, you see a German soldier or a German officer. Now look, at that time we didn't wear no Star of David. They didn't know who was a Jew, who was not a Jew. I'm going to bring this out. And at that time, if you caught on the sidewalk and you didn't get off the sidewalk, you didn't
Bow your head?
bow your head or pulled off your cap.
Tip your cap?
Yes. For the German soldier or German officer, the penalty is death.
Okay.
Then they came out. If you own any kind of sharp objects like a knife, a certain length, you don't deliver, the penalty is death. If you own a radio, you don't deliver the radio, the penalty is death. If you own a gun, a rifle, ammunition, or anything, a bomb, you don't deliver, the penalty is death. Now you see, when you listen to so many things coming out, the penalty death, right away it goes through your mind. Even if you are a kid, you don't have to be a grown up. You know what that is? Sooner or later, you're going to be dead.
So you were scared from the time they came in and they read and all those rules. You were scared.
See, let me tell you something. You see, when they bring up, if you bring up something one time, you can eliminate it and let it pass. But if for every little thing, it's dead. So you know, sooner or later you're going to be dead. But school was normal. But there's one thing you could, I think every Jew, if he could understand a little bit German, could understand right away when you saw German soldiers marching and they sing, weit ist der Weg zurück nach Heimatland. So weit, dort wieder kommt die neue Zeit. Und weiter, der put in this, die Juden ziehen daher, so ziehen zum Roten Meer. Die Wellen schlagen zu und die Welt hat Ruhe. You see?
Say it in English.
In English, it's like this. You see, the Jews pull from one place to another place. But soon they get to the Red Sea. They're all going to be drowned. And they'll all be dead. And the world is going to have peace. I'm going to translate it that way. You know, you already heard so many deaths. Now you listen to the propaganda songs. And the propaganda songs, the ones to sing, is everything has to do with the Jew. But that was the first 30 days. After the first 30 days, on a nice morning, they came in. And we happened to be having classes, mixed classes. Which didn't have to do with Hebrew, but mixed classes with Polish, you know. In America it would be with English. And they came, and the first thing they took out is they took out the principal, the assistant principal, the teachers, and all the students. Now you didn't take the Jews, they took everybody, but they left the porter. You know, you start thinking about it. Why did they take out all the teachers and assistant principal, the principal, and all the students, and they leave the porter there?
That's like the janitor?
The janitor, yeah.
Right, okay.
And they took it out on a work assignment. You know, at that work assignment, when you go out, you always think you're going to go out and do something of use. You know, if you're going to go out to work, you're going to do something useful. When we got out on that work assignment, you found SS, with a lot of whips, German shepherds by him, and there was no such a thing as walking. Everything was run, loose. That means run.
So wherever you went, you had to run from place to place. If you walked, what was the penalty?
Got beaten up.
Wow.
Yeah. But the work they took you out to do, they had to prepare 2 piles. 1 pile of stones, mud on one side, and one pile of mud on the other side, and what you're doing is you're taking this mud and the stones from this side, taking the other one, bring it from this side back to this side. If you have enough intelligence, enough seichel, enough sense, what would you consider work like this would have to do with something useful? You see, in the first place, to take your dignity, they would try to take your dignity away. Try to take your manhood away, your childhood away. Try to take your intelligence away. And you do that. You don't do it for an hour, for 2, for 3, for 4. But after you work 4 hours, you want to go over and get a sip of water, you got beaten up. No, cannot have it.
How about what do they give you for lunch after working so hard?
What they give you for lunch?
Yeah.
Yeah. You see, that's what I'm trying to get to. So, 6 hours you work, you don't get nothing. So you figured you're going to have to get used to your system. If you had a little intelligence in you, you're going to have to get used to with your system. But you're going to have to shrink your system because you're not going to get nothing to eat. So we worked on it for 12 hours and not a sip of water, nothing to eat. But before that let us go home, every one of us, the principal, the assistant principal, the teachers, and all the Christian children, all the Jewish children were thrown in that mud with them stones, and they took a water hole, and they took the German shepherds, and you had to run, and they made you wet, so you know, and I recall that today, when I got home. You have children?
Yes.
I'm sure if you would have something like this happen, I hope it's never happened to your children, to you, you would come home and you've had a rather, what's happened, what did they do to you? See, an intelligent person with a good common sense, when it sees you coming home, my father should be in heaven, was a very smart man. First thing my mother did, we didn't have no showers. We didn't have no bath in the house. We washed us up, cleaned us up, gave us dry clothes, or gave me dry clothes, let's put it that way, because my brother David was not taken from there. And after cleaning up, putting on dry clothes, my father, my mother, good Jewish parents, they fed me. Then we sat down, and the first thing my father said, my kind, my child, what did you all do down there? So I told my father, I said, the work we did was of no use. Like I brought up at the beginning, it was no more than to really to take your dignity away and to beat you to death. We took, so my father, you know, was sitting, I remember like today, put his hands on his cheek and his oive. You know, we are today at the right time and at the right season to bring it up. My father went over and took out the Haggadah. You know what the Haggadah is? We just got through
right, we just got through
using it.
Yeah. We're in
We're still
Pesach
in
now.
Passover.
We're in Passover
You know,
right
it's
now.
now
2008.
today.
Yeah.
But you see, he took out the Haggadah. And he got in the Haggadah, and page after page after page after page. Didn't say a single word. Then finally, he came to a chapter down there in that Haggadah. You know what the Haggadah told him? There was a time history. Where our people, the Jewish people, were slaves under the pharaohs. And they were panicked in Yiddish, tortured, the same as they did with you all down there, to take your dignity away and to bring you down to nothing. That's a repeat from this time of the pharaohs when we were slaves under Pharaoh. But that case was closed. My father didn't talk about it no more. He made a prayer. He says, God should watch over us. There's very bad things. It's going to come ahead of us. It's going to go happen. But next day we went back to school. My father opened up his business and everything was normal. That was going on for quite a while. One day, they came in and they took out nothing but all the Jewish children.
How'd they know you were Jewish?
Principal had to tell them who was Jewish and who was not Jewish.
So the principal identified
He
you.
wanted to identify all of the Jews. So they took us out and they took us to a place, an ammunition factory. That was 1940. In that ammunition factory, they already had prepared barracks. You know what a barrack is?
Barracks, right, like the military, yeah.
Okay, they had prepared barracks with shelves. We wore our civilian clothes, just what we brought from at home, no Stars of David or anything. But there was no more going home. When we got home from that ammunition factory, from working down to the first half a day, we came to that camp, and on that camp, on the you know, the door from the, what do you call it, on the fence,
Yeah.
you know what you call the
Barbed wire?
the barbed wire fence,
Fence?
yeah, the fence.
Yeah.
Down there, you saw a sign down there. Arbeit macht frei. Work will make you free.
Okay. Was this camp near your hometown, in your hometown?
In you, on the radar.
It's
Yeah.
a munitions,
Yeah, with broken foot.
an ammunitions
Yeah, not ammunition factory.
factory, okay.
And we camped that evening. We got a little bit, I call it soup. It was a coloring of soup because there were no potatoes. You got a slice of bread. But we didn't know what's going to happen. So next day, after we spent the first night down there, there were no mattresses, there was no pillows, there were no blankets.
So you slept on a wooden slab?
On a wooden, you know,
Just a piece of wood?
shelf.
Yeah.
And I guess your jacket or your sport coat, whatever you had on, was your cover, and no towels, no soap, no toothpaste, no combs. And next morning, they had what they call a roll call. Woke you up at 5 o'clock in the morning and counted up if nobody escaped or nobody died. And then we got our rations for the morning, breakfast. In America, I call it breakfast, whatever. We got a slice of bread and some black coffee with some saccharin in it. The coffee was ersatz, was a coloring on it. Tasted like coffee. So you figured maybe for lunch you're going to get something. You're going to go to work. So we worked on it for lunch. We did get something. Got like 3-4 cups of a dark coloring, no potatoes, no nothing in it, no bread, no nothing. In the evening, got the same thing. Then they came out. You had to go through a selection. And I'm not talking about, we didn't have no crematoriums down there. We didn't wear even that, you know, that little striped suit which you saw down there in the Holocaust Museum. And that's it.
So on the selection, the ones who were selected to work, worked, and the other ones?
So, but what I'm trying to bring out is this. You see, you live by eating. But if you don't get nothing to eat, your system will shrink where you don't have to eat. But if you don't get to eat, your feet are not going to carry you. So when you get weak, you cannot walk. You see, the fence, but we were down there, in that place, in that camp, if you got it in 8 feet, you got electrocuted. But they did. They took the people, in order to eliminate bullets, they took the people, the ones that couldn't walk, and they stacked them up alive. They stacked them up like you stack up wood for a fireplace in the wintertime. Whenever they accumulated 20, 30, 40, 50, they grabbed somebody out from the line in the morning, you know, from that roll call, and they tell you to go over down there, and we had Nafta. You know, Nafta is kerosene.
Kerosene, yeah.
If you know what kerosene is.
Very flammable, right?
Poland, if you went there, you know, we didn't have no bathrooms like they have down here. We had to go downstairs, and outside they had a bathroom. But in the camp down there, what they did is they built a wooden deal with a hole in the ground, and that's it. You went in there. But at that place down there, they saved out and they accumulated all these people. They used that kerosene, throw it at them, and throw the match and burned them alive.
They burned them alive.
Oh yeah. You see, we burned them. They did. We did.
They made you do it. And if you didn't do it, the penalty was?
Then you.
Was
gonna
death.
be-
Yeah.
yeah.
So you had no choice.
No. So, but you see what's happened? When you burned the people, there were some people, some kids, you know, the oldest must have been down at 25, 26 years old. And at that time, you knew you have to burn them. But some of them ask you, if you give me a sip of water, I might still can be working. I'll be able to get up and walk. If you don't burn him, they burn me. So we had to do it. And this was going on and going on and going on. But you know, how long can you wear this jacket? How long can you wear the shirts? How long can you go on with that 3 minutes in the morning to wash your face? I'll take my piece of paper for human use to go to use the bathroom.
So not even toilet paper, nothing.
No
So-
towels, no nothing.
They treated you like animals.
Worse than that.
Worse than animals. Animals get treated better.
But you see, at that time, you see, when you live under conditions like this, the guy I was sleeping with, you know, next to me, we were talking a lot. Should one of us survive, let's remember, just like you do now, to be able to tell. But who thought conditions like this, they're taking everything from you. You know, even now at the time, take a person, if he gets ill, does his mind work? No. But thank God, you know, we've been down there in that camp 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. Still the same thing. But Poland had a lots of collaborators. The camp, besides the German SS, which they were guarding, had the Polish police down there. You were able to bribe a Polish policeman to take you down to see your parents. And at that time, they didn't even have any ghettos yet, after 6 months.
So you got to see your parents sometimes?
Listen, but what could I bribe him with? So I told him, you know, Polish policeman took me down. My father gave him a little ring or give him a little diamond or some foreign currency. He got good paid for it. But when I came down, he took me Friday out on it. He says, I'll be able to let you stay down until Tuesday. Till he be back on duty. So he kept me down until Tuesday. Sunday night, he took me down Friday. Sunday night, they had what they call, it else would be like a riot. German SS, you know, we were still living in different, in not in mixed areas. They came and they started through the collaborators showing them where the Jews are living. They took out some Jews.
Were the collaborators Polish and Jews, or just the Polish? Who were the collaborators?
The collaborators were Poles of German ancestry,
German answer.
which they were called Volksdeutschen. Our Jews were collaborating with the Germans too.
So there were Jews who collaborated against other
Oh
Jews.
yeah, that's the reason we had them even later in the camps. They were called capos, C-A-P-O-P-S.
Capos were Jews, yeah.
Yeah. So Monday morning, I went out with my father to the store, and my oldest brother Shrul was down there. My brother David was there. Yankel at this was with mother, and an 18-wheeler came. I told my father we're going to have to it's called a requisition. I don't know, is that an English word?
Yeah, requisition's English.
It's
yeah,
English, okay.
They basically took all
Take away the
all his
take out
goods.
the merchandise.
all his merchandise.
So they took out the merchandise. They had to carry that, load it up. And I was there that day. And when they got through taking out the goods, they give them a receipt to come to collect the money. So the store's over. A week later, I came home. So my father says, let's go and see if they pay you something for it. You know, we went down, there was no ghetto yet. We didn't even wear the Star of David yet. Went down to the SD. You know what the SD stands for?
No.
Sicherheitsdienst. If you don't know what Sicherheitsdienst is, that's the Gestapo.
The Gestapo, okay.
And we went down, and at that place there the SS stormtroopers, the same building, staying guard. You came down, and they told you to go down to the basement, to the cashier. If you came down to the cashier. There was a line, Jewish merchants waiting to get paid. You saw already lots of them hanging, beaten up to death. We told my father to get out. They wouldn't let him out. We're going to get paid. You know how it is. When you're young, you're strong, with a clear mind, you see your father hanging and beaten to death. That's what I saw. That was the first thing.
Let me understand. You saw your father
Yeah.
being beaten to death?
Yeah.
Right there in that
There
building?
were lots of them hanged down there, beaten to death. But when it came to my time, my father's time, we wanted to get away. But we had to stay and see and watch.
Oh my goodness.
You couldn't move. You have to stay and watch. Well, when we came home, told our mother what's happened. Our father's not going to be with us no more. They didn't even let you touch the corpse, the body out. So, what's going to happen without father now? So I remember like today. My brother's house, Ruel, the university where he went to. Matter of fact, they were living in the same building where we were living in. Was, well, he is a district attorney. In Polish, was a procurator. His daughter went to the same university with my oldest brother. And who knew? My brother didn't go with her. There was no connection between them. But she fell in love with him. She fell in love. And then, a little later, they started making a ghetto in Rado. In the ghetto, my mother, and my brother Struel, my brother David, my brother Yankala, they all moved in. We gave away our beautiful home for one room. The room must have been 8 by 10. So the little hole, I remember like today. And across from us was a guy, a good friend of my father's, Goodstadt. Goodstadt was in the jeweler business. And when they made the ghetto down there, I still was able to take, that was not a concentration camp yet. I was able to take that same Polish policeman, take me down there to the ghetto. When it took me down there to the ghetto in 1942, you're talking about the Horb. You know what the Horb is?
No. What is it?
You've never seen, never heard, and I hope you never witnessed anything like this, but that's happened down there. So that night, they came and they took all the Jews, every Jew, men, women, and children, had to come out in that ghetto down there, like a roll call. And they already at that time, they had prepared. I call everything a principality. What was the principality? Like a magistrate. You ever heard of the word
Magistrate, yeah, sure.
Magistrate?
Yes.
Like the city hall would go be a magistrate.
Yes.
The most important thing in that city hall was to have a police department and a labor department. The labor department for all Jews. And this people when they had that roll call at that time. Now, if you recall, at the beginning I told you, it was a city of 1 million, there were 20% of Jewish people, you got 200,000 Jews.
Mm-hmm.
And you build a ghetto that can hold 60,000, 70,000. What are you going to do with the surplus of another 120 or 140,000? See, people were stacked in like sardines. As I told you, my parents, all of them, and I ate by 10-foot little place down there. They had a little stove down there, from steel, something like this big, for the good stuff and for us.
Now, were you
I
still?
was in the camp already. I was in the slave labor camp.
You were still in the camp.
Yeah,
They were in a
the ghetto,
ghetto,
right.
but you still, for all those years, were in the slave labor
But
camp.
I still had the guy,
The Polish guy take you back once
yes,
in a while.
because he got good paid.
Right. Even in the ghetto.
Even when my father wasn't there, my mother took care of my brother, my oldest brother, Shua. And I recall that today, at that roll call. You brought out so many people, and you make a selection. I told you they have to eliminate 6,000, 7,000 people a day. And they start taking out the children, number one. The old, number two. The feeble, that means the sick,
Right.
once they cannot work. Number three. Then, a mother to take the baby away from her. There, she will not let me go with the baby. So the mother went too, That took out 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 people. And at that time, we already had connections. We knew already, they had the places prepared, like Auschwitz, Birkenau, Majdanek, Treblinka, and all the places where they had crematoriums.
Sure.
But they got through taking out the 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 people. You're dealing with sadists, you're dealing with murderers. They had to go out and get in the homes where the Jews were living. That's all you had there. You had the ghetto.
Right.
Going in. Mother had a baby, so she hid the baby under the mattress. Some of them hid it under any place. Yeah. So they found a little baby. You're talking about the little baby, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months old. You see a German goon. Take that baby and tear it apart by the feet. Or they took an older baby, a year, 2, 3-year-old, and they made a game out of it. An assessment will stay downstairs. He'd be on 3rd, 4th floor, 5th floor. Throw the baby out, and then if he misses that on the bayonet, he lost the game. That was a bet for money already. You see atrocities like this. You're already 16, 17 years old. You know what goes through your mind? The first thing you ask yourself, dear God, if you believe in God, you say, dear God, I know I was 15 when that started. I'm now 17. Maybe I have sinned, maybe I deserve it. But when you take a kid, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months old, and that kid is torn apart by the feet, how can you be a bystander? See that?
Yeah.
Your mind start working in a different direction. You're losing faith in God. You know why? if you see a crime committed, you don't report that crime. You are an accessory to the crime. So you see, when something like this, you already come up in your mind. If you have a mind, you come up and you ask yourself, you got, I was a believer in you. What did you do? You seen atrocities like this committed, and you don't even help a little infant child. I put myself, you trust, I have committed maybe sins. This baby has not committed no sins.
So because of that, because they were killing babies, you sort of at that moment lost your faith in God?
Yes.
And you questioned it because you said, how could he let this happen? Yeah. That you said to yourself.
You see, I didn't bring it up when my father was beaten to death. And if you recall, I had said myself, at that time when I was 15, 16, 17 already now, maybe I have sinned and I deserve it. But I don't think this child has committed any crimes or sinned to being torn apart by the feet and thrown out from the window. And you seen that.
Yeah.
See, you're talking to God then. You know, as time went on, we're talking about 1942 already. 3 years the war goes on. See, in that ghetto every day, you see people taken out every day, 6,000, 7,000 people.
Because 1942 is when 80% of the Jews in Europe were murdered by the Nazis. Is that not true?
And in 1942, the crematorium started working 24 hours a day.
Right. That's the big,
Then, you see, if you were a German soldier or a German officer or a German civilian, they had special divisions which they came up with, and they put them in on an assignment how to eliminate the Juden, the Jews. Whoever's came out with a better ID got more paid, got more stripes, or, you know,
higher rank
higher ranks.
and a bonus for figuring out how to kill more Jews.
You see, but I'm trying to tell you.
Mr. Repp, I'm going to have to stop now because the tape's running out. We'll take a break. I'll put a new tape in and we start again. Keep the thought. Thank you. I'll turn it. Lake, and this is tape 2 on April 21st, 2008 for the Dallas Jewish Historical Society interviewing Mr. Jack Repp. So now we left off and it was 1942, you were in the ghetto and you were telling me about what happened there, so if you'll continue.
I was in slave labor camp, but I went home to visit the ghetto.
So you were still in the slave labor camp, but your family was in the ghetto. And they were doing a roll call, and so continue from there, please.
So you see that roll call down there, when they made the ghetto down there. Let's get back to when they made the ghetto. And they had to deliver every day 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 people. If you recall, I brought it up before, but I'm repeating myself. And at that time, when I noticed, I came down to the ghetto being smuggled out from my slave labor camp to take me down to visit my mother because my father was gone already. And at that time, when I saw, if you recall, I was telling you about tearing that little infant's baby apart by the feet,
Right.
and throwing it out the window, and I had questioned God, where are you?
Yes.
That's February.
Right.
But you see, at that time in the ghetto down there, when they had to deliver that many people, day in and day out, and they took out already 20, 30, 40,000 people. So the ghetto was too big because they always wanted to make it smaller. So they took the Jews from this ghetto and they made a smaller ghetto. In that smaller ghetto down there, they already, at that time, my oldest brother, Sal, was afraid so they wouldn't get my little youngest brother, Yankel, 5-year-old one. And at that time, he was already 7-year-old. And if you recall, I brought up, we had a neighbor, a district attorney, and the daughter went to the same university with my oldest brother's school.
Right.
And she came to the ghetto and asked my mother at that time, Havala, I like your son through from the time we've been in the university. You see what's going on down here. I would like to marry through and take him out the ghetto. And by doing that, I will take Yankel, my youngest brother. He was already at that time 7 years old. And I already got prepared iron papers for him. And I will take him to Warsaw. My father arranged already for a place for him. At that time, you didn't look, to save a life. Sure, my mother agreed to it. My oldest brother arranged for my mother a place in order for her not to be taken out because, in Europe, if you were in the 40s, you were old. At a factory where they were manufacturing for the military uniforms. He placed it down there. For a bribe, you got in there. And my brother Shrul went to Warsaw with my little brother. They bandaged his feet, they bandaged his face. They went on the train, came to Warsaw. And in Warsaw, he joined the Polish police, through her father's connections. He joined them. And at that time, which I found out later, some of this Jews, the Jews, the ones that joined the Polish police as Aryans, were connected with the underground. And that was during the time I went back to the camp. My mother was placed in a good place to work. And at that camp down there, go back before the war started in 1938. You see how I go from 42 to 38. There was a treaty signed. And the treaty, the ones was signed, was between Molotov and von Ribbentrop. It was a non-aggression pact between the two countries, but at the same time, it was a plan which they put in that treaty down there, a division. What was the division for? The division for, if they should run over Poland, the Russians will come from one side, and the Germans from the other side. And by the Wisla, they will divide Poland in two.
So the Germans and Russians decided they were going to divide Poland if they had to. Yeah.
If you recall, I told you 1938.
Right.
Then from that 1938, the treaty lasted until 1940. But in 1940, the treaty was broken because Russia overrun, the Germans overrun Russia.
Germans invaded Russia,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden no treaty.
The treaty was broken.
Okay.
You see, at that time, that was going on for a month. And after that month, we were in Radom in that factory. I was in Radom in that factory. They brought us home from the factory. They made a roll call. The roll call was always put the girls on one side, the men, the boys on the other side. Always undressed nude. Always stayed nude at the roll call. Regardless summertime or winter time. At that time, they came up. Now how a people's mind works, how a sadist mind works. You know what a sadist is?
Yep.
The sadist has been prefabricated for that purpose, to being able to read your mind, or you look at your face and read your face. And at that time they came, and I told you we were on the roll call, and they came out, the Russians are coming. You see, if the Russians are coming, we're going to be free. So you see, if they see a smile on your face, they take you out, and they kill you. But the roll call was over, and at that time, that was the first time we learned we're going to go out on a dead march.
A death march. Okay.
The dead marches were usually made either the sun was burning or the frost was freezing.
So either the coldest time or the hottest time, they
That's
took you
right.
out
Okay.
on what they called a death march.
So, and they took us out on the dead march. They took us from Radom, that place it's called Korzenice, about 38 kilometers, 7 days.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you know, if the sun is burning, you don't get nothing to eat, you don't get nothing to drink, but if you pass by a sewer, you want to bend down to wetten your hands, or your own urine, wetten your tongue, or wetten your lips, they kill you. You see, from that 38 kilometers, 5,000 boys and girls marching, you're going to lose 1,500 until you get to the destination. When we arrived at that destination, that Korzenice down there, and if you recall, I brought up before, we already knew by liquidating the ghettos, what to do with the people. We knew already about crematoriums, and we knew how the crematoriums worked. Not all of them, but if you had a mind, and your mind was still good, you knew what's going on because you had connections to people. So I recall like today we came to Korzenice. They had a place down there, a factory. That factory must have been closed down there for 30 years, or 40 years maybe. When we got down there, the same thing. Undressed, you're going to take a shower. When they say you're going to take a shower, this was fearful. So, they marched us in. Before they marched us in, I recall like today, I was 17 and a half years old. I said, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. That's going to be the end of my destination. We got in down there. stay down there 2-3 days. You stay 2-3 days in a place. You don't get a sip of water, you don't get nothing to eat. And if you recall, I brought up before, how God works in mysterious ways, but you can actually shrink your system, but you don't have to eat. We lost half of the people down there. But I guess God must have had a plan for me. I survived that. All of a sudden they opened up the doors, and we found out we were sold. Sold.
You were sold to whom?
To Werner von Braun,
Werner von Braun,
to build missiles.
the guy who builds the missiles.
Yeah. But they took us back to Radom to the factory. We came to Radom to the factory down there, and before you know it, they had another roll call down there, we're going to take a shower. It was 1943 already. Taking that shower, took off our clothes. I always had pictures from my parents, from my brothers with me. Even today, you know, I don't care for my brothers, but I always kept pictures in my pocket. I kept pictures from my children, from my grandchildren. I have pictures always in my pocket. But you're gonna hide something if you stay nude. So I hid it under the sole of my feet. Next to me was a boy which we were brought up, we lived in the same neighborhood, we went to the same cheder, we went to the same school, we played soccer together, Morris Rappaport, from a fine, outstanding, good Jewish family, very wealthy people. They went in the textile business. To go to school where I went, you had to have money to go down there. You know, like you go down here to Akiba Academy, down them schools. Even my grandchildren went down here to the temple, it cost plenty of money a year. Mm-hmm. You know, I just brought out, I saved my pictures under my sole of my feet. That kid Morris Rappaport must have raised up his hand, touched his mouth, and swallowed something. You know what he swallowed?
What?
A little loose diamond.
Swallowed a diamond. Then what?
You see, our parents, wherever they are, they should be in heaven. When we came home to the ghetto, they always give you a piece of diamond, or a piece of gold, or some money, some foreign currency. Maybe you'll be able to get a piece of bread for it. At that time, from the tower, a German assessment came down and asked him, "What did you swallow?" He said, "I swallowed a little diamond, a loose little diamond." You know how it feels? You're 17 and a half years old. They took me out and took out another kid. We tied up that Morris Rappaport, that kid's hand to the back, and took him close to the fence. He gave the other kid the bayonet and opened up his stomach. You know how it is.
So they had them open the stomach of Rappaport with a bayonet.
Yeah.
He was still alive?
Oh, you do it while he's alive, yeah.
And they slit his stomach open.
Yeah, split the stomach open.
And then what did you have to do?
Tells me, you know, I was there with him.
Yeah.
To go in and find that little diamond. You know how it is to go into somebody's stomach in the inside and go through everything down there.
No, I don't.
Even his column, until you find that piece of diamond. And I found it, and I washed it off, and I handed it to that gem. You would have thought at that time I would have been immune, because they took me out from the line to handle this.
Oh.
No, I went back in my place. And at that time, see, we had the angel of death coming down making a selection.
Tell me his name.
Dr. Mengele.
Dr. Mengele, okay.
You see, and Dr. Mengele during that time, I thought I'm going to be immune. I was not immune. He went in. When I went through the selection, I didn't even know I had that in me. He found a little cold feeling in my tooth. You know how it is when you take someone out of the line, like they took me out down there to get in the stomach, and they give another kid to tie up my hands and give a pair of dirty, rusty pliers to another kid.
Rusty pliers, right?
Rusty.
Yeah.
And have all your teeth pulled. And they found that piece of gold. You see, and now we would have been afraid, you know, for not to get any infections, or so you have to have penicillin or antibiotics or that. See, God works in such mysterious ways, but it's unbelievable.
So this kid had to pull all of your teeth out
Yeah.
with rusty pliers,
All my
and
teeth.
and you, no anesthetic, nothing, just
No,
that's it.
but you see, I didn't get infected, and I survived that too. From 17 and a half years old, I didn't have a tooth in my mouth. Thank God I got beautiful teeth now in my mouth. What I'm trying to tell you, and at that time, after this election, took away our civilian clothes, I told you, and they give us that striped suit. And from the beginning, when I went into the camp, that slave labor camp, they didn't tattoo me. I don't even have a tattoo today.
No tattoo. Why did they not tattoo you?
I just, you see, we went to Auschwitz. Went through the selection down there. We were the first transport of anyone ever to come in and get out. And we went from there in 1943, we went to Waihingen Ends. You know, I told you before, we supposed to went over and work, we were working in an ammunition factory.
Right.
We were professional people to go and work at the missiles. But I guess, you know, many times I brought up God works in mysterious ways. Several times, thank God I don't have the Alzheimer's disease. My mind is still all there. But when we got down there, the Allies were there before we did. They bombed the factory.
The Allies bombed the factory, and it was in 1943. Okay.
Yeah. In 1943, when we got down there, we supposed to went down there and build a factory. So where did they take us to build that factory? They took us down in a stone mine. That little striped prison suit, what you probably saw in the Holocaust Museum down there. That little suit, no underwear, no socks, no, my shoes. I lost the soles from my shoes. I had my feet wrapped around with paper.
Paper rags?
Paper from a cement sack with some fire wrapped around. In the winter time.
Was it cold down in the mine?
In that mine down there. We went down there, and if you want to know the rations we got, if you recall from the beginning I told you, that's what we got. That was the plan. You know, we didn't supposed to survive. We got in that place down there, we worked down there 2 shifts, 12-hour shifts. in that 12-hour shift that we worked down there, we lost, there were about 3,000 of us left. We must have lost half of them. And thank God, end in 1943, got helped. The Allies came, and they started bombing down there. So when they bombed down there, they took us out. You know what demolition is?
Demolition, yes.
They took us out on assignment to go out and earth bombs for the Allies' throat. Here the Allies came with the planes, the sirens were blowing, you know, they're onto the shelter. We stayed in top down there, and I bet them nobody ever got killed.
So you even had to survive the Allied bombs.
Well, I'm going to tell you that when the Allies came, and they bombed, that was the best music to our ears, if you could still hear, because something is going to happen. About survival and being left alive, nobody thought about it. But we built down there, and you know, how we survived from down there to come out is still beyond me today. And that work that we did, that demolition work down there, you went out demolition work, you found a piece of peel from a potato, even a sewer, you found something down there. And believe me, you didn't care from where it comes out from, you put it in your mouth. But at that time, Allies went away, we went back into the stone mine. And they kept us down there, and we worked down there, we worked down there. The Allies came a little closer. So they took us out on the dead march.
Another death march.
Always a dead march.
And where were you going this time?
Hessenthal. From Weingen to Hessenthal.
How many kilometers?
Oh my God, I don't know the kilometers, but we walked about 3, 4, 5 weeks.
Weeks?
Weeks, yeah.
3 or 4 or 5 weeks?
Yeah.
Also with no water, no food, no nothing?
Look. The thing that kept a lot of us alive. You find a piece of peel. Somebody died, you slept on top, the one died, so you had a little bit softer. And then he might have had a piece of bread he didn't eat. You found it, you ate it. Or a piece of peel, you ate it. But you see, this is not the most worst thing in your life. You know, I don't think a person which didn't go through that can even, his mind can imagine even things like this. Do you know what the worstest thing in a person's life is?
What?
Dirt, lice will eat your life. You go down for days and days and days. You don't wash yourself. You are inhumane. You know, and don't consider your mind to being that strong, because longer it lies, the bigger your mind gets, and you start already
Hallucinating.
You know, there's 1943 and then 1943. Each one of us, from the dirt and from the lice and from the malnutrition, had typhus. So did I.
Typhus.
The fever will eat your life. You bend down, you want to get a little bit snow to put in your mouth in the wintertime you got. And I brought up before, I didn't have no shoes on. I had paper wrapped around my feet.
Yeah.
You see, when a doctor looked at my knees, he says, you have more arthritis than anything else in your knees. You know, and I figured you don't need to tell me that. I got these 3 fingers. I can tell you when it's going to rain, when the weather is going to change. So, and I told you from Weingen, we are on the Dead March to Hessenthal, finally they got boxcars and got help, we got to Hessenthal. Upon arriving in Hessenthal, we found some people there, which we have been with them in the camp. You know, the first thing you ask, you come in a camp like this, what would you ask after so many years, so many things? What would be the first thing you think you asked?
You tell me.
You see, you don't ask, what are they feeding you down here? What's happening? Have you seen my brother? Have you seen, if you had a sister, my sister? Have you seen my cousin? Have you seen my uncle? Have you seen my aunts? Have you seen my mother? You know, my father was not there no more. You know, the answer was, oh, they are all here. You know, you will even get to be with them.
You're going to join them? Is that what you
Yeah.
said? And what
They're here.
what did he mean by that?
Soon you go through the chimney. You will meet up with them.
So they're telling you they all went to the crematorium. That's what they say.
You know, you're already 18 and a half years old. But at that camp, I tell you now, we have a commandant down here. This commandant doesn't use no bullets. He has never killed a person. But the means of the way you're gonna die down here. You have never found or seen a sadist like him. He kill you by looking at you. Now how? You take in the morning, you have a roll call. You bring out, you got a couple, 3,000 people, you know, I'm gonna put a big mast on it, 3,000 people. You take the gas from one side.
Okay, so we're continuing. You were telling me about the sadist before the battery went low, so please continue.
So you see, that was a place down there, which the commandant was such a sadist, where he figured out a way he can kill people without using any bullets. Now, how do you kill people without using any bullets? Sadist has a way. You see, in the morning he will have a roll call. And at that roll call, he will come out with a plate. And at that plate he will have what they call tort.
A tort, like a delicious piece of cake, like a fancy cake, yes?
See? Yeah.
Is that okay? I know what a tort.
6-7 layer cake.
I know a tort. Okay.
Okay. In that tort, he will grab a big bite and especially drop down a chunk of it on the ground. You know, when you got 3,000 or 4,000 hungry lions, 200-300 of them will run to grab that piece of tort or that piece of cake. When it comes by getting up, you can find 100, 150 people laying that cannot get up to dead because you're dealing with dead people. Now, if I can kill 100 to 150 people with that piece of cake, and I'm going to go behind the fence, and behind the fence, I will throw in radishes. In Europe, they had radishes but the size of grapefruit, frozen one. That doesn't care even if they come out from the dirt. And I will throw in 1, 2, 3, 4, throw in about 15, 20, 25 of them. Several hundred people will run down there to grab that. I will have another couple, 300 people laying dead.
Because they died on the electric fence?
Huh?
The people died from the electricity in the fence?
No.
Yeah. Oh.
They died, they cannot get up.
Oh.
They're too weak.
Too weak.
You see, if you recall, I brought up before, if you have the two people, the boys from one side, the girls on the other side, you look at each one of them, you are not able to tell who is a boy and who is a girl because the eyes are odd. You're looking at skeletons. You know, that's a funny thing. And I wished, well, I don't know how old you are, but at that time, Edward R. Morrow was a correspondent for BBC.
I remember him.
For the British Broadcasting Corporation.
I remember him later.
Okay. Now, you know, and I think Edward R. Morrow, when he broadcast from Buchenwald, he brought up where he was among dead people, walking among the dead people. He came up with exactly the same thing that I just got to tell you. When you look at the boys, you look at the girls, or the women, you cannot tell who's a boy, who's a girl.
Because they were all so skinny, so emaciated. They were like all skeletons, yes?
And the smell of dead people is still in his nose. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that because I was among them. But, you see, at that time, in that camp, this sadist has really killed more people by not using no bullets than a crematorium. But even at that camp down there, we stayed down there, was already in 1944. The Allies came close. They bombed the camp. What happens? We go on another death march.
A third death march.
We went on more than 3 death marches.
But from where to where this time?
We go from Hessenthal, we go to the Black Forest.
Do you know how far that was?
Destination, probably 50 kilometers.
50 kilometers. Right.
This is only close to Bavaria. We're going from Schwaben. Schwaben, Stuttgart, Ludwigsburg, Böblingen, Weihingen, Hessenthal, Schwäbisch Hall. That's, thank God, every place I went, I can remember the name where I passed by. And upon arriving down there, from that destination to the Black Forest, from the Black Forest to Dachau was another 40 kilometers, 30 kilometers. And we stayed down in the Black Forest. In the Black Forest, God help, we stayed down there, and they always came, they needed some people to go out to do some work. In my lifetime, I was in so many professions, it's unbelievable. They needed a tailor, I was a tailor. They needed a shoemaker, I was a shoemaker. They needed anything they needed. A barber, I was a barber. Anything, how long one of us was that? Because God forbid, if we got out 10, 12 people, neither one of them knew anything about it. We got beaten to death, I did. So in the Black Forest, I needed somebody to go out China boots. So you find a piece of peel from a potato, if I found something. We stayed down there, we stayed down there, we stayed down there. And finally they got boxcars.
They got what?
Boxcars.
Oh, boxcars, yeah, okay, the boxcars, yeah.
And they loaded us up in the boxcars. You know, a boxcar can hold 30 people, 35, 40. You put in 125, 130 people. You know how to stack them?
Like sardines, huh?
Yes.
You couldn't
You
sit?
know, no way to lay down.
No, can't lay down, can't sit, can't move.
Cannot move. You know, you urinate one on the other,
Whatever, yeah.
inhumane. You see, what I'm trying to tell you is this. When they got the boxcars, we had some news. They're going to dynamite the boxcars with the people in it. All of a sudden, one day, two men came up in civilian clothes, and they had Red Cross bands on their arm, and they introduced themselves from the Swiss Red Cross. You know, deals like this. Look, that's how you kill people. They read the faces. If you ever smiled or something, you're going to get killed. The sadist knows how to read faces. I learned from two that's how to read faces, believe me. And at that time, they made a remark. Do you know what the remark was? If there's anyone down here between you all can remember of anyone, anywhere in the world, of a relative, somebody they knew, anywhere in the world, can remember a name or a country or an address, tell us. We're going to let them know, because the war is going to be over. Get scared to death, but thought we're going to be dead already. I must have brought up a half a dozen times or a dozen times God worked in mysterious ways. And God can actually implant in your mind things which you have never thought of. Why do I say that? I recall when I was 8, 10, 12 years old, we used to get mail from relatives in America. And because my father said, paid for him to go to America. So I had an uncle and an aunt, my mother's sister, in a place that's called Greenville, Texas.
Greenville, Texas, huh?
So I told them I had an uncle and an aunt in a place that's called Greenville, Texas. Same Schwartz, price talks. That's it.
Did you know a street name or just the city?
I took off the stamp as a kid, I saved stamp.
So it was just the city.
I just got implanted in me to remember that. And I give him that. And if you recall, at the beginning, I was talking to you about 1937. My sister got married. Do you remember that?
Went to Paris, France, yes?
Went to Paris, France. And I give him Max, give him the name, 34 Rue La Marche, Paris. And, but Paris, if you recall, was occupied by the Germans too.
Yes.
So, I just give the name, give the address. And that was it, they left. They got from every one of them, but I've ever remembered. Well, God helps. Finally, and in 1944, it's already 1945, January. We are still in boxcars. And they take us up and down, up and down. We pass by so many places which I can call you up by names, which I noticed on the signs. It's unbelievable. And finally they brought us in 1945, must have been end of February, they brought us to Dachau.
So which camp, how many camps had you been in? This is the 5th camp?
Radom, Vaingen, Hessenthal, and from Hessenthal we went on the lots of dead marches, 5, 6. Then we went from the forest, Black Forest, to Dachau.
So Dachau.
In Dachau I was liberated. So when we arrived in Dachau, I recall that today, make it short. And at that time, if you recall, I told you, the lies were eating us alive. When we arrived in Dachau, the first thing they did, they sent us 10,000. Go take a bath. And they said to go take a bath. If you recall, before in Kozhenitsa, I said the Shema Israel.
Right.
I said the Shema Israel again, because I'm going to go in, but I'm not going to come out. But they must have had 1,800 people, which we came, plus other transport. So I must have been away 300, 400, 500 feet, 600 feet from the crematorium, in the line. Because walking, I couldn't walk no more. And to tell you the truth, to say my mind was by a clear mind during that time, I will lie to you too, because it was already, so I was by gone, Matter of fact, I would have thanked God I would die.
So your mind was playing tricks on you. You were having some hallucinations. You
Yeah.
could hardly walk. What did you weigh at that time?
Well, I'm going to get to it.
Okay,
I
sorry.
didn't know I'm going to how much I weighed until I was liberated.
Right.
So we stayed down there 2-3 days. It was already end of April. There were no roll calls.
No roll calls.
No roll calls.
Unusual, yes.
Huh?
Isn't that unusual for no roll calls?
Well, that's what I'm trying to get to it. There were no roll calls. All of a sudden, you saw some people coming in the uniform for deference. And they go around and say, "You free, you free, you free." I don't speak English. What the hell is he talking about? My mind was up there.
So you didn't understand. They're telling you.
Nobody knew what's going on.
You didn't know what they were saying.
But, I got worked in mysterious ways. I used that word a dozen times already, Danny. By going through with that, all of a sudden a man came. And I looked up, I opened my eyes, he had 2 pieces of gold on his shoulder, 2 bars. Yeet, yeet, yeet. So he started talking Jewish to me.
What did he say?
Und ich komm eure, du bist ein freier Mann.
And what's that mean?
Don't be afraid, you're a free person. Ich bin ein Amerikaner, he's an American.
Could you believe your ears when he told you this?
He talked plain Yiddish.
And you believed?
And I didn't believe, but, it was good to hear a Jewish word.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, you don't see a German no more. After he said that, maybe 15, 20 minutes later, trucks started coming up with Red Cross, and they picked us up, and they took us away. So, after so many years, living in the conditions like we lived in, and people, but you never saw a decent person talking nice to you, undressed you, cleaned you up, put you on something clean, and took you to hospital. They threw out the Germans, put us in. And at that time, you asked me before, how much did you weigh? So I didn't know at that time. 69 pounds.
69 pounds. And you were
21 years old.
21 years old, so you were even older. When you were 15, you weighed 160. So at 21, you weighed 69 pounds, which to me is like skeletal. Like you couldn't even see it.
Hell, yes, I told you.
Not a piece
you
of fat
couldn't
on your
tell
body.
the difference between a boy and a girl.
Yeah, so you were just a living skeleton.
So, I stayed down there in that hospital for 4 months. The people the kindness and the generosity is, I don't think it can be expressed or told. You know, after so many years, you see decent people waiting on you and treating you kindly. And at that time, we got from philanthropical organizations, could be from the Joint, could be from the UNRWA. We got clothes, so they dressed us up, you know. And after 4 months, after 6 years, I haven't seen a mirror. After 6 years, I haven't seen a piece of print. I went in the bathroom, because 4 months I was laying, and everybody was taking care of me.
Were the doctors American or?
Yeah. American doctors, American nurses, you know, and unbelievable the kindness and the generosity and the goodness. That's the reason I don't have a bad word to say. And you know, I recall like today, when I went in the bathroom and I looked in the mirror and I saw I got a little bit of skin on me, got a little bit of hair, and I guess must have been sent from America. And I was dressed up already in a pair. Nice pants, and nice shirts, and nice jacket. And I guess my mind started working. And I saw I can walk a little bit. You know what I did?
What?
It's unbelievable. But I went back exactly to the same place. But that camp down there. For I was liberated. Up and arrived at that camp down there. 2 young men in the 20s. I came over and I said, I want to see. I couldn't speak English and Yiddish at all. They say, a man, 2 pieces of gold. But he looked at you. You can tell you are a Holocaust survivor from Hitler. And what went through their mind. And now I can tell, must be a little bit, not all there, you know. That young man, wherever he is, that's the reason even today, for the veterans of the Second World War, regardless who they are, my prayers are always with them. You know, I took out a piece of Hershey's candy, chocolate, and gave it to me. But I will get back to something to you before. And before that, before I was liberated, we were given by the Americans a key ration package. You know what a key ration package is?
K-ration?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the GIs they get in that.
Right.
And I never opened it. And I took that piece of candy and put it in my pocket. And I went away from him, went over to the other guard. I went over to the other guard and I said, listen, 2 pieces of gold, 2 Stücke gold, you know. Man, 2 Stücke gold. Go home, he tells me. I lay down on the ground and I start crying. This I will never forget. He went on the telephone and called up. And I got for some mysterious ways the same Jewish captain came down. Uncle, look at you. Oh, look at you. You know, the same Jewish captain. He says, was Vista. Will arbeiten. I want a job. I want to do something. So, you know, to get back into mention God's name, God works in mysterious ways. And if you recall before, I have told you, I have given up on God before.
Right.
And I mentioned the infants.
Right.
If you recall that.
Yes.
So you wouldn't think my Siddur does work, God's good, you know. And he brought me in the kitchen. And, you know, he only got 2 pieces of gold here. He brought out a guy. His sleeve was full of stripes.
Stripes up and stripes
Must be a
down.
triple general down there. He was a mess sergeant.
Right.
But, you know, God helps, you know. I got a Yid, I'm speaking Yiddish to him. This guy It's Kazi Kowalski, a Polak from Chicago, speaks Polish. What do you want? Support. We got work for you. You know the work they give me? Not to lie to you, I had a barrel, peel potatoes. Baguette. I peel the potatoes, and I peel them real thick. Instead of putting the peels in the barrel, I put them in the inside of my shirts. And I'm gonna bring him home. We're gonna have a big party. You know, I used to get a piece of peel from my sewer. Here I got peels that thick. I peeled it. All of a sudden, when I was peeling, I didn't see nobody. The whole company's around down there in that place down there. And everybody looks at me. He comes over, what did you do? You know, like that. I said, I tell you what, in Polish to him. Ja ukradłem, a ja za to będę pracował. So I told him, listen, I know I did something wrong. I shouldn't have did that. You all were so good to me. And I stole some of the peels from the potatoes, and I'm gonna work as long as you want me for it to make it up to you for it. Until I saw a crack on the lips, a smile, I was scared to death, I cried. They took me up, the Jewish captain and him both of them, took me up to a supply house. Took my clothes off and I stayed nude. And they dressed me up as an American. In an American uniform.
As a soldier.
So now, I'm an American. You know. I'm an American, I'm fine already. But you know, I had 6 years of my life spent under the darkest of the dark conditions a person can live in. The people are so nice and so good to me. But I had, in the whole 6 years, I had a dream and I had a jealousy. Well, I promised these people I'm not going to steal no more. Dressed me up as an American. I went down, and believe me, I went back to my job to peel potatoes, and I peeled them like a piece of paper that thin. Didn't put them in the meat, put them in the bread. But I look around, there's nobody down there. There was a round table, just like I'm looking down there in the corner now. And that round table had the whitest bread I have ever seen in my life. Cake was not even that white.
Like Mrs. Baird.
Yeah. I went, got under the table, took a whole loaf of bread, and I give you my word of honor. I eat every slice of that bread from that loaf of bread.
The entire loaf.
With that a sip of water.
Any butter, any jelly, nothing?
No.
Just
Oh my gosh, it was better than cake.
Whole loaf of bread.
The whole loaf of
Had
bread.
you ever had white bread before?
No.
So that's the first, is something new to you, yes?
But let me tell you something. All of a sudden, I got the whole damn thing again happened to me. The whole company down there.
No way.
And I said, this time, I'm caught the second time stealing. And I started crying. I cried worse than a little kid. I cried so hard for that mess sergeant, that Christian man, came over and hugged me, gave me a kiss, and the Jewish captain gave me a kiss on his camera. And he says, Yabush, you didn't do nothing wrong. He says, why did you do that? You know, when you live through what I did, and I guess God had plans for me. I said, I tell you what, I had a dream one day to have a whole loaf of bread and to be able to eat as many slices as I want. And I did that, and I fulfilled my dream. I got a hand in the whole company. Everybody had tears in their eyes. But, you know, I don't have to bring this up down here because there's no anti-Semites down here. But if you recall, I had a jealousy too. And how did I come to fulfill my jealousy? My dream is fulfilled. And this has happened already very, very later. You know, if you recall, they came out in Tennessee, when they came out with the paperclip with that picture.
A picture about the...
And when they brought back the 2 boxcars down there.
Right.
And when they brought out 2 boxcars, they started painting them. And they painted butterflies. You see?
You're talking about the Christian kids in Tennessee who never knew a Jew,
No.
and then they read about the Holocaust,
Yeah.
and they started collecting
Yes.
paper clips.
Yes, and you see what I'm trying to bring out is this. When they painted the butterflies, you see, when I was incarcerated, when I was in the camp, and we were in a roll call, a butterfly could sit down on the ground, was able to fly away, and I wasn't able to fly away, and I was jealous of that. But you see, if you live, you have years to live, you can get your dreams fulfilled, like your jealousy fulfilled. You see, I saw painting the butterflies. Now, I am a free man, and I can do the same thing what they did. They flew away, now I'm free. And thank God for that. So.
That's great. Okay.